Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me today in the extremely pretty Dee Valley in North Wales, where I'm going to be exploring Route 85 along the Llangollen Canal. The start point for today's ride is the small village of Trevor in North Wales, on the Pontcysyllte Aqueduct, and I hope I've pronounced that right. Now, we've driven here today and parked in a large pay and display car park in the village, but you could also come from Chirk along Route 84, which goes over this aqueduct, but as the towpath is very narrow on it, I've decided not to do that today because I am towing my little one with a bike trailer, which we think is a bit too wide for this towpath. So we're just going to do Route 85 down the Dee Valley following the Llangollen Canal, and as you can see by the yellow colour on the Sustrans map, this is all completely traffic free. Parking was easy in the larger of the two car parks for the Pontcysyllte Aqueduct, and at the bottom of the car park was this lovely convenient path that goes down to the marina where we can start our route. The marina was a lovely spot with lots of boats to see, some wildlife to have a look at, and also a few places to get something to eat if you like. Now we're going to be heading off along the canal that goes under that bridge, but in order to do that we've got to get across this canal. So if you carry on down the marina, down the side of the canal, and keep your eye out for a left turn, you'll see a sign for Route 85. Now this takes you down some steps and under the Pontcysyllte Aqueduct and back up the other side. As you can see with these steps, because I've got a bike trailer on the back, this was actually quite tricky. It was also quite tricky for my wife, who had a bike seat with our older son on the back as well, to come down there. But we did make it and we managed to get under the aqueduct. And I can't really complain, I suppose, because we are dealing with Victorian infrastructure here, and I don't think they had sort of active travel for all in mind when they had these things built. I think it's also quite cool down here that you get a view of the aqueduct that most people wouldn't get. Now this aqueduct was completed in 1805 after 10 years of construction. It was designed by Thomas Telford and William Jessup, and it's actually the longest aqueduct in Great Britain and the highest aqueduct in the world, helping it to gain its UNESCO World Heritage Site status. Fortunately, the trip from back up underneath the aqueduct didn't involve any steps, which would have been quite tricky with the bike trailer on the back, but it does involve a small piece of road, although this is a very quiet bit of road, so it didn't bother me at all. So head up here, and once you go over the canal bridge, look out for the left-hand turn to carry on the journey along Route 85. As you can see, the first part of this path along the canal is actually quite narrow, but it's not long before you actually cross over a bridge and onto the other side of the canal and come to a much wider path, which is actually the towpath for the canal. Now from here on in, there is no locks or other bridges that you've got to cross, and so this route is about as flat as you're ever going to get for about the next 5 miles. The Llangollen Canal was originally part of the Ellesmere Canal, and then later on in its life the Shropshire Union Canal system. And this particular branch that we're on, that goes from the Trevor Basin where we started, the little marina, over to the Horseshoe Falls, just the other side of Llangollen, was built as a navigable feeder for the canal. So really just to supply water to the rest of the canal system. But they made it just about deep enough and wide enough you'd be able to take a boat down there as well. Although in parts, as you'll see a bit further down, it does get very narrow indeed. The first couple of miles of this towpath are brilliant. As you can see, it's decently wide, very well surfaced, and it's quite quiet. We're riding this on a Saturday afternoon in good weather, and it's not exactly heaving down here. We have had to pass the odd person. We've also had to make our way past the odd canal boat and the odd paddleboarder along the way, but it's certainly not heaving with people, and it's quite a pleasant ride this first few miles. A few miles in, we came across this rather interesting bridge. I had a look around, and to the left, going down the hill towards the River Dee, there was a field, and to the right, as you can see, there is a field. So I can only assume that this bridge was put there for the farmer to take his livestock or his tractor across the canal between his different fields. Along the canal you'll pass under plenty of bridges, but fortunately these are wide enough that you don't have to get off your bike. If any of you saw my last video on Route 5 between Stafford and Stoke, you'll know on that canal that I rode along, some of the bridges were quite treacherous and you really did have to get off your bike and watch your head as you went under them. A couple of miles from Trevor you'll pass under a bridge, which is an old railway bridge, and those of you that watch my other videos know I don't like to pass up on a bit of railway history. Now this bridge used to carry the River Dee in Wrexham to Barmouth Railway. The route fell victim to the infamous beaching cuts, and in 1965 it was closed to passengers, and then 3 years later it was closed completely. Further down the valley, as you get to Llangollen, you can see that part of it is now reopened as a heritage railway. Unfortunately that railway was closed today, so we didn't get a chance to see any trains. And further along the old railway, between Dolgellau and Barmouth, the old track bed is used as Route 8 of the National Cycle Network, also known as the Maudak Trail. Definitely worth a cycle down that one, it's beautiful. Most of the canal is tree lined, but at times it does open up to get a great view of the Dee Valley, and there's some very pretty views if you keep your eye out for the breaks in the trees. I mentioned earlier that parts of this canal are very narrow, and here you can see one of the sections I was talking about. I'm told that when navigating this part of the canal, that spotters from the boats have to run ahead to check that no boats are coming the other way, because there's not enough space for two boats to physically pass each other. As you get closer to Llangollen, which is about 4.5 miles from Trevor, you'll start to notice a few buildings by the side of the canal, some of them very pretty indeed. You'll also notice that a section of the path does narrow considerably, so be very cautious here, and I would suggest if anyone's walking towards you to dismount and push, just for safety's sake. It's just after this section that if you take a look to the left, you'll see the view open up and you'll get a great view of Llangollen Centre and the bridge there at the bottom of the valley that crosses the River Dee. As you can see, it's quite busy down there as we're here on a Saturday afternoon and the sun is shining. On the opposite side of the canal from that view is this rather fabulous looking house with its castle aesthetic, so quite a pretty place to stop this and take in the views. And not long after you've taken in those views, you come to a very nice tea room on the side of the canal. At this point you have to dismount and push past the tea room as you're not able to cycle through for obvious reasons. On our way back we actually stopped at this tea room, and I can definitely recommend the bacon brie and cranberry pralini. It was delicious. After the tea room the route became considerably busier than it was before. It actually got so busy that we actually decided to dismount and push rather than keep trying to ring our bells and get past people that were walking along this section. But it is a Saturday afternoon, and as you can see the sun is shining, and so to be expected really. I imagine that on a weekday it wouldn't be quite as busy as it is today. It wasn't just people either that were using the towpath. As you can see here, this section of the canal still has horse-drawn boats that take tourists up and down. So if you are going to come down this section of the canal, just bear in mind that it's not just yourselves and pedestrians that you'll be sharing this towpath with. After making your way under another road bridge with an extremely narrow towpath, which requires a lot of care, the path does open up again and the route becomes a little bit quieter again, so we're able to get back on our bikes and make a bit faster progress again. The further from Llangollen that you get, the quieter that this section of towpath gets. And as you can see, it's still quite wide here and well surfaced. Now we've done this on our mountain bikes today, but this would definitely be possible on hybrid bikes. I wouldn't recommend doing this on a road bike though. Although it is well surfaced, like I've said, there are parts that are a bit bumpy, and I could imagine if there's rain, the surface definitely wouldn't be good enough to come down here on a road bike. And talking of roads, the towpath here does eventually lead onto a small road that heads towards a pub on the side of the canal. Once you've gone through the pub car park, you need to make your way down the side of the pub along the narrow towpath, and then carry on your journey as the towpath opens up again at the other side towards the Horseshoe Falls, which aren't far away now. This final section runs right alongside the River Dee. You can't see from the GoPro footage here, but if you look through the trees on the left you can see the river right next to you, and it's an extremely pretty river. As you carry on towards the Horseshoe Falls, which is going to be the end of our ride today, keep an eye out for the pump house in front of you. Now this pump house is still operational and still takes the water from the River Dee and sends it off towards the canal system. Just past the pump house, you make your way through a gate to be greeted with this amazing view of the Horseshoe Falls. Now this is a weir that was designed and built by Thomas Telford to help supply water to the canal. And where we parked to this point here was just over 6 miles, so it was a lovely spot to have a little rest before we made the return journey back to the car. Obviously going via the tea room. I mean, what is a bike ride without a refreshment stop? To sum up, this is a brilliant ride, very easy to navigate because you just stick to the side of the canal. It's one that I wouldn't necessarily take if you're looking to go somewhere fast, but if you're just looking to take in the views, which are very pretty, and have an enjoyable afternoon out, this is definitely a ride I could recommend. Thank you for watching, it is appreciated. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, it really does help. And again, thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.